When you've been doing it as a family here for 100 years, it's just what you do. So the wine industry is what we do. There's no doubt that having 100 years of family history in the business is something that is quite easy to reflect on for me. My great-grandparents, they were poor Croatian farmers, and when I mean poor, they were super poor. They made a very big decision, I think, to effectively export or immigrate their children out of the country. As each one turned 16, they borrow some money off the church, buy a ticket, and you're off to New Zealand. In 1910, my grandfather left, and actually he was younger, he was 14. Never sees his parents again. Walk out of the village, you walk to the local port, it takes a day and a half to walk there, and that's how you depart. But you actually say goodbye and you never see them again. It's a real sacrifice for my great-grandparents to have done that. Never meet their grandchildren. What Croatians who were arriving were doing was going up into Northland and digging kauri gum. So they were digging this stuff out of swamps, and it was really tough work. And my grandfather looked at that situation, and there's a lot of Croatians there, and Croatians are happiest when they can return home to their tin shed and have a bottle of wine. I think they're rather grumpy without that. So he saw that opportunity and planted a vineyard. He would have planted those grapevines in 1912, and then in 1916 there was enough grapes to get a wine license and start commercially making and selling wine, which is what he did. So they leased some land first of all. They didn't have enough money to buy the land, but being farmers at heart, their dream was to own land, buy a farm. They came down here and put a deposit on this property and started breaking in this farm. My grandfather said that when they left the gum fields, they were earning cash up there, so they had cash flow. But when they came down here, it all stopped. So in 1919, he said it became very difficult, started running out of money. My grandfather, he was, I think, mentally and physically a really tough guy, and to fail wasn't an option. He just had to keep going forward. He got a job outside of the farm. So this job was to pick up the milk pails around the district. What that practically involved was getting up at 3 a.m, hitching the horses up, and going around the district and picking up these milk pails from the milking in the district and being back at the depot by 6:30. Back at the winery at 7, have breakfast, and then do a full day's work in the vineyard or winery, and then go to bed, and it'll be like Groundhog Day, and just goes on and on. We sort of look at the business in that way, and that it goes backwards 3 or 4 generations of contribution towards this, things that have enabled it to occur, and that there's a debt backwards, and you can pay that debt forwards. So I might not meet my great-grandchildren, but I'm thinking of them. You grow up at the business, you see cartons of wine going out from when you're old enough to recognise it, and that's what your father does, your uncle does, your grandfather does, and everyone's actually involved in the business. It was 1981, and a German guy walks into the wine shop, just here, and he tastes the wines, and my father, who was doing a bit of work around the wine shop, actually went over, I saw as a tourist visitor, and went over and served him. And so they were talking, and the guy tried these wines and said, "These wines are very good. I think that my market at home could benefit from these wines." And it turns out he was in the wine industry as an importer. So he said, can you sell me a container of this wine? And a container is 1,000 cases. And so Dad said yes, and he says, do you have an export price list? We didn't, but Dad said yes. And he went upstairs and just wrote out what the prices would be and gave it to the guy. And the guy said, this is what I'm looking for, can you supply it? And Dad said yes. And the guy wrote out a cheque and said, here's payment for this, and let me know when it's ready. And it was like, oh, we're in the export business. A really nice part of the story is that my grandfather's still alive. So he would have been sort of in his mid-80s at that point. And this container is on the back of a truck, rumbling up the road, heading back to Europe. And for him, I think that was a really nice thing because he had spent the last 70 years working in this business. And now his sons were sending wine back to Europe where he had immigrated from. So although he didn't actually get to see the extent of export, because we're now 90% export, he didn't get to see how we took that and ran with it, but he did get to see us exporting, and the beauty of it was back to Europe, which for him would have been very meaningful.